Welcome to the Hundredfold Journey. We help people step out of religious bondage and into true abundance. We invite you to embark on a journey, a spiritual journey called the Hundredfold. At a Hundredfold, we are a group of people developing new thoughts, habits, and beliefs to understand our true identity, to live our life purpose, and experience the abundant life just the way Jesus did. Our mission is to provide support, encouragement, and resources to help you on your journey. The life you are meant to live is closer than you think. The journey is the destination, and your journey starts now. Good morning, Doug here from the Hundredfold Journey. Thanks again for joining us on this Grace Awakening Network program. We're on a journey with you to help you to know your true identity, live your life purpose, and experience true abundance. Because a Hundredfold is about a group of people who are looking to find their true identity, and by doing so, finding God's true identity. So thanks for joining us this morning. Today, we're starting a new series called Living from the Unseen. And what I'd like to do is kind of a quick review over the last few teaching sessions and talk about the impact that these have on our lives. So as we've been on this journey, we've talked about freedom from religious bondage. We've talked about kingdom parables. We've talked about the 7 I am statements of Jesus. And then the last series we did, the I am the dwelling place of God. So as we dig into that, the freedom from religious bondage, if you know that you've been freed, and I'm sorry, I'm going to back up for just a second. The hundredfold path, I'm going to ask some questions. If then, right? If you know that you have been freed from religious bondage and that I am free from guilt and condemnation, which is what we talked about in freedom from religious bondage. And if you know that every thought is a seed that is planted and that every thought produces some 30, some 60, and some 100-fold, which is what we covered in the kingdom parables. And then if you know that Jesus was our example of humanity and what kind of life is possible through the 7 I am statements. And then lastly, if you know that I am the dwelling place of God and he is in me and expressing who he is through me, which is what we did with the series, I Am the Dwelling Place of God, then we should be living from the unseen. Living from the unseen. And our key verse is 2 Corinthians 4:18. We don't look for things that can be seen, but for things that can't be seen. Things that can be seen are only temporary, but things that can't be seen last forever. That's what this series is about. That's what the hundredfold is all about, is living from the unseen and not living from the temporary, but from what lasts forever, which is from the Spirit. So I'm going to ask our viewers some questions. So if you could maybe take a look at these and then answer them based on the teachings that we've been doing. So question 1, when was the last time you saw God physically?
I would say that he is in me, lives in me and through me.
Yes, good answer. However, have you been able to point to God either out there or somewhere out in the physical? Have you seen God?
I I would say yes, because he is in everything, every living thing.
That's right.
The
But you
sun and the
can't,
moon. Yeah,
but you can't see him, but you know that he is all of creation.
correct.
Yeah. All right. Then the next question is, how do you know God is real if you can't see him, right? So yes, we have the metaphysical understanding that God is everywhere, God is in me, he's in other people. But how do you know God is real if you can't see him?
Hmm. I don't know. Well, I believe he's real because he is in everything creation.
Yes, and I agree with that.
Mhm.
And I think if we were honest, how do you know God is real if we can't see him? Sometimes uh, we go for the physical, right? And the manifestation, um, but you really can't see him. It's not like Jesus is standing in front of you and saying, I am God. So there's an element of faith, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then when was the last time you heard God audibly? Hello, this is God, take a left at the next signal. Um, have you heard from God audibly?
I can't say that I have.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know there's the still small voice inside of us that prompt us, and I know there's been others that have heard God audibly, but for the most part, on the $8 billion people on the planet, not a lot of them have heard God audibly. So, how do you know if God is real if you can't hear him? It's the same question. If you can't see him, you can't hear him. How do you know God is real? And it's pretty much the same answer, right? There's an element of faith. We have to trust, we have to believe. Now, the question is how did Jesus say he lived his life as a man? Right? There were two things that he said. He did what he saw the Father do, and he only spoke what he heard the Father say. Right? But there was
Right.
only a couple of times where Jesus heard God audibly, and that was when he was baptized and then on the Mount of Transfiguration. But other than that, there weren't, he lived 30 years of his life and there were only two voices that he heard. So how did he know to heal the woman with the issue of blood? How did he know how to heal the blind man? Right? There wasn't a finger that came down from heaven that pointed, okay, Jesus, here it is, here it is. So Jesus lived the same way that we do as well from the spirit that is from within, right? And here's the statement. Jesus said he only did what he saw the Father doing, and he only said what he heard the Father saying. So is there any recording of Jesus saying, oh, there you are, God. I'll go do that now. I can see you over there. Or, okay, 10-4, I hear you loud and clear. I'll go speak to them over there. Right? There was none of that. So how did Jesus do it? And how do we do it? And what I'm suggesting is there's a tuning process that occurs, just like a radio frequency. We have to dial in to the signal, to the frequency, to the vibration, to the energy of God and spirit, which is in us and throughout the world. So there's a tuning um, requirement, if you will. So the way of living from the unseen is to tune into the invisible, unseen frequency of God's voice. So how do we do that? So now the question is why don't I hear God's voice? What are some reasons? So for those that are online, what are some reasons why we don't hear God's voice? Again, it's it's that prompting, it's that urge, it's that nudge. We see the outward um, physical maybe guiding us and helping us, just like Jesus, right? So Jesus was able to hear God's voice clearly, um, as we can clearly see in his life, right? He only did and said what he heard the Father do. So what are some things that block us from hearing God's voice?
I think a lot of it could be, the The voices, the busyness of life,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
fear, because that kind of keeps us in a lower vibration. So we're not trusting, and you really can't hear God because He's really love and peace. And when we're not on that frequency, excuse me, it's hard to hear the voice of God.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Great. Great. Yeah. Because fear blocks out. Fear is the opposite of love. So if God is in the frequency of love and we're on the frequency of fear, we're not going to be able to hear it. And maybe Abel's maybe a hard word. It would be drowned out. The voice would still be there, but we just wouldn't listen to it. So here are some, summary, influences, external influences, our history, our habits, religion, self-thoughts, and others' opinions about ourselves. Um, I didn't include fear there, and that one definitely is a big one. So a nice catch there. So God's voice and God's opinion of you is on the other side of these negative influences, maybe our history, and even religion for that matter, which says you have to confess your sins before God can hear you, which is the realm that I was in for many years. So what we need to do is basically have a software upgrade. We need to take out the negativity, depression, fear, pain, negative thoughts, negative emotions, being nervous, being worried. We need to do a software upgrade, if you will. And that's really what a hundredfold is all about. That's why we've gone through, the parables, the seed parables and the seven I am statements of Jesus to understand who we truly are. Because when we understand who we are, then our the love antenna, if you will, is more attuned to the voice of God and the direction of God. And Romans 12:2 says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good, acceptable, and perfect. And God's will is always good, acceptable, and perfect, which is where love comes in. So the will of God is for us to love, not be out of fear. Now, the issue is that 80 to 90% of the thoughts you had today were the same thoughts you had yesterday and the day before. So what we have to do is get out of the cycle of the negative thinking about fear and religion and our history and start changing the thoughts about ourselves and about God. In fact, my opening statement is a hundredfold is about a group of people who are looking to find their true identity. So when we're looking for our true identity, all of a sudden we realize God is much bigger and greater than we ever thought or imagined. So we have to change those thoughts. We get stuck in patterns and habits that trap us in our limiting beliefs with fear-based decision making. And that's where the ego comes in. The ego says, I want to keep you safe. You can't do that. You don't want to do that because you're going to be vulnerable. And vulnerable is an interesting state to be in because it opens us up for opportunities. It means I don't know. I don't know what the next step is, but I'm trusting, I'm being vulnerable that God is going to show me the way, light up the breadcrumb trail path for me. So sometimes we get stuck in the habits of that's just the way I am, or that's the way I've always done it. We need to change those because again, 80 to 90% of the time, it's the same thoughts you had yesterday and the day before, and it just continues. We need to turn off the opinion of the world. I actually recommend this for my coaching clients is that we actually should have a social media fast where we turn off the news, we turn off the negativity because there's so much negativity out there, is that we turn that off. And not only that, but turn off the opinion of the world and what maybe others might think that we need to do or say, buy this product and, you'll reduce wrinkles, buy this product and you'll lose 10 pounds in 1 week. Whatever it is, we need to turn the opinion of the world off and instead turn on God's opinion of us, because you are being infected by the seeds planted by this world. And that goes back to the seed in the sower that we talked about several teachings ago, where the very thoughts that we have about ourselves and who we are, those seeds are going to grow and flourish. So if we plant an orange seed, we're going to get orange. If we plant fear seed, we're going to get more fear. If we plant love and gratitude and appreciation, that tree is going to grow and we're going to see more gratitude and love and appreciation. So it's time for a software upgrade. So upgrade number one, influence religion and the world has on how I view myself. So I need to change that influence of how religion and the world has on how I view myself. And then upgrade number two is my opinion of myself needs to match that of God's opinion of me. Okay. So in a sense, we are removing the old and we're putting in the new. Okay. So what is God's opinion of me? What's God's opinion of you? So there's a lot of words here, but it's really good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. For in him all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form, and in him you have been made complete. So Jesus, it's talking about Jesus here, is the him in this. Jesus is the fullness of the deity of God, which dwells in him. And guess what? You are in him. So you could make this statement about yourself, that the fullness of the deity of God dwells in us in bodily form. He is the head over all. So that means that I'm not the key guy, right? I'm the brother, if you will. He's the firstborn, and then I am within him. So he's head over all, um, and authority. And in him you were also circumcised with a circumcision made without hands. So it was remove the flesh, removal of the body of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ, having been buried with him, in which you were also raised with him through faith in the working of God who raised him from the dead. All right. There's a lot of words there, but basically what that means is that um, Christ dwells within me. I died with him and I've been raised with him. And now I am equal with him. We are one because the fullness of the deity of God dwells within me, just like he did with Jesus. And when we get our minds, and by the way, this is not me talking, this is Colossians, right? And then there's a whole bunch more. Second Peter, accordingly, as his divine power has given to us, that's you and me, all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him that called us to glory and virtue, whereby are given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that by these you might be partakers of the divine nature. There it is again. We have the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in this world through lust. So it's important to understand that uh, these promises that we have, the promises of Colossians, the promises of Second Peter, and a bunch more that I'm going to be sharing with you, these are all promises for us to step outside of the scene, and the world will tell us completely opposite of these truths, and step into God's opinion of you, that we do have the divine power that's given us all things for life and godliness. So we have the fullness of the deity that dwells in us. We are complete in him. You are head over all. You rule over all. You have authority over all. You are no longer flesh, but spirit. You died with him. You were raised with him. You have been given all things. You've been given life and godliness. You have God's divine nature, and you escape the corruption of this world through the five senses. Pretty amazing. That's God's opinion of you. And then over here on the right, I like this picture because we are a life-given spirit. There's a kingdom within us. There's the divine kingdom that's within us that can't be seen. It is within us. And this is God's opinion of you. So the question is which voice do we listen to? Do we listen to the voice of the world, or do we listen to God's opinion of you? And what's cool about this is it says, whereby are given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that these might be sorry, that's the wrong, yeah, partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. So the way we were able to step out of the seen and into the unseen is through these great and precious promises. And by believing and understanding and agreeing with these, then we have the divine nature. So now what? How do we live from the unseen? And it's called rest. And I've shared this picture before. I really like it. It's the farmer that when he cast his seeds into the uh, into his garden, that he didn't have to do anything except rest. And then when he woke up the next morning, there was the crop that was just ready for him to reap the harvest. And we need to be governed by the word and voice of God, not by physical senses. And Matthew 4 says, a person cannot live on bread alone, but every word that God speaks. So we're listening intuitively inside to that voice that's guiding us and directing us just the same as it did with Jesus. Our relationship, we need to know who our Father is and becoming familiar with. And it's just like a physical relationship with your parents, with your mom and dad, is that you have this relationship and you know you can recognize, you can hear the voice of your mom or your father or someone that you're in love with. You know that voice. You're very familiar with it. So it doesn't seem strange when it says, go do this. It's you're familiar with it and you can trust it and you can know that it's guiding you and directing you. And then fellowship. Fellowship means spending time. Relationship is becoming familiar with. Fellowship is spending time with, and spending time in fellowship with other people, or just in prayer and meditation with God. And then starting to experience where you hear that inner voice. And, maybe an example might be you're in the line of McDonald's and you're ordering breakfast and there's a voice that says, hey, pay for the person behind you. And there's that prompting. You have that thought. That's a thought pop that comes in. And then you decide, am I going to listen to that? Am I going to do it or am I not? Um, the more you do that, and listen to that voice and actually execute upon it. And then you tell the McDonald's person, hey, I want to pay for the person behind you, even though it's a little uncomfortable, maybe a little bit weird, but you do it. But then you look after you pull away and you see the smile on the person's face and you go, you were God to someone today. But that came from rest. You weren't worried or anxious about doing anything. It just came to you naturally. And then the last thing I want to share is the 10 truths. So understanding the voice of God and how God guides us and directs us. When we are understanding the 10 truths of Jesus, that today, right now, is the best moment of my life, that all my needs are constantly met. I'm always in the right place at the right time, that God has granted me favor in the sight of those around me, that everything my hand touches prospers, and I have an attitude of gratitude, and that circumstances don't matter, only state of being matters, and I have unlimited possibilities and resources, and that I will be God to someone today. And what that means is that, like that person in McDonald's, right? You're being God to that person behind you. and that life is a mirror which reflects back what I truly believe and think. So when we believe and trust these truths as true for us because they were true for Jesus, then we can start to see God showing up everywhere. And this is how we live from the unseen. All right, that's it for this morning. Thanks for joining me on this hundredfold journey as we start to endeavor on how do we live from the unseen. And each week we'll talk about specifics about how we do this and why we do this. So please be sure to join us each and every week. The Hundredfold Journey is on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and we have an extensive YouTube channel, so please join us there. And then, of course, you can join us on the Hundredfold Journey through our website. There's a QR code, and then if you have any questions, you can email me at doug@thehundredfoldjourney.com. That's it for today. Thanks for joining, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.